The taking the morning sun painted golden streaks across the agricultural domes of New Eden, humanity's proudest colony on Kepler 442b. Children laughed as they chased holographic butterflies through the community gardens, their parents watching. From nearby benches, coffee cups steaming in the crisp morning air. It was Thursday, which meant Outdoor Education Day at the colony's primary school. 87 children between the ages of 5 and 12 gathered in the central plaza, their excited chatter filling the air as teacher Marina Rodriguez organized them into groups for their nature walk. Nobody saw the ship until its shadow blocked out the sun. The Zirathi harvester descended like a metallic storm cloud, its crystalline hull shifting and morphing as it adjusted to the planet's atmosphere. Parents dropped their coffee cups, the ceramic shattering against the ground in a symphony of disbelief. Security Chief Marcus Chon hit the emergency beacon, but his fingers trembled as he realized the futility of the action. The nearest Earth military vessel was 3 days away at maximum burn. The ship didn't attack. It didn't need to. A pulse of blue energy swept across the plaza, and every adult froze mid-stride, conscious but paralyzed. Only their eyes could move, forced to watch. As translucent tubes descended from the harvester's belly, the children screamed, tried to run, but the tubes moved with impossible precision, engulfing each child in a bubble of shimmering energy. 87 young voices cried out for their parents, tiny fists pounding against barriers that wouldn't break. Marina Rodriguez would later testify that the worst part wasn't the taking itself. It was the silence that followed. One moment, the air rang with children's terrified cries. The next, they were gone, lifted into the ship's belly like specimens into a collection jar. The entire harvest took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Then the Zirathi ship rose into the morning sky and vanished into a fold in space itself, leaving behind only the echo of absent laughter and 87 empty spaces where children should have been. The paralysis field released the adults 12 minutes later. Marcus Chun found himself on his knees, his security protocols useless, his training meaningless. Parents collapsed where they stood, their anguished wails carrying across the colony. Marina Rodriguez stood in the empty plaza, still holding the electronic attendance pad that now showed 87 names in red. Earth. Command received the distress signal 3 hours later. President Sarah Mitchell was pulled from a trade negotiation with the Altarian Commerce Guild, her face draining of color as she read the report. The Security Council convened an emergency session within minutes. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only 43 years, still considered newcomers by species who measured their histories in millennia. They were known for their trade goods, their adaptability, their almost amusing enthusiasm for making friends across species lines. Nobody expected what came next. Admiral Jennifer Park, a grandmother of 6, stood before the council with steel in her voice. The Zirathi have taken our children. I motioned for immediate military response. Admiral, Counselor William Trevor interjected. We should attempt diplomatic channels first. The Zirathi are an ancient species. They have technologies we can barely comprehend. Perhaps if we explain. They paralyzed parents and stole babies from their arms. Park cut him off. There is nothing to explain. They knew exactly what they were doing. The vote was unanimous. Earth's first message to the Zirathi Dominion was measured, diplomatic, carefully worded by xenolinguistics experts to avoid cultural misunderstandings. The human colony of New Eden reports the taking of 87 juvenile members of our species by a Zirathi vessel. We request immediate communication regarding their status and swift return. Humanity values its offspring above all else and seeks peaceful resolution to this matter. The Zirathi response arrived 18 hours later, transmitted on all frequencies for the entire galaxy to hear. The specimens have been acquired for the Great Archive. Young consciousness provides purest data for species cataloging. Your offspring experience no distress in stasis. In 7 of your generations, when your species achieves proper enlightenment, you may petition for visitation rights. The Zirathi have spoken. The message continued with what the Zirathi clearly considered helpful context. They had been collecting juvenile specimens for 12,000 years, preserving them in temporal stasis to document the galaxy's biodiversity. 43 species had contributed their young to this grand project. Most had protested initially, but all had eventually accepted the honor of inclusion in the archive. The Zirathi expected humanity to follow this pattern. They had made a critical error in their calculations. They had studied human biology, human technology, human trade patterns, but they had never studied human history. They didn't know about the mothers who had lifted cars off trapped children. They didn't know about the fathers who had faced down predators with nothing but rocks and fury. They didn't know that humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily, and the only reason they survived was because they protected their young with a ferocity that transcended logic. President Mitchell's second address wasn't to the Zirathi. It was to humanity itself, broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every human settlement from Earth to the frontier colonies. They took our children, she said simply. 87 sons and daughters, stolen from their parents' sight. The Zirathi believe we will accept this. They believe we will mourn and move on, as they claim others have done. They believe wrong. She paused, her grandmother's eyes hard as granite. I am invoking Article 7 of the Human Unity Charter. As of this moment, every human vessel, station, and settlement is mobilized for one purpose. We are bringing our children home. Article 7 had never been invoked before. Written in the early days of human space expansion, it was called the Last Stand Clause, requiring every human in space to contribute to an existential threat to the species. Within hours, the transformation began. Cargo ships dumped their holds, making room for weapons. Miners recalled their automated drones and reprogrammed them for combat. The cruise liner Celestial Dream, carrying 3,000 tourists through the rings of Avalon, diverted to the nearest military depot, its captain announcing that anyone who wanted to disembark could do so, but the ship itself was joining. The Hunt. Research stations pivoted their entire focus to one question. How do you track a ship that can fold space? Dr. Hannah Liu, a quantum physicist who had been studying dark matter interactions, looked at her team of 12 researchers. The Zirathi used dimensional folding technology. Everything that moves through dimensions leaves a trace. We have 70 hours to figure out how to follow that trace. The response wasn't just military or scientific. It was visceral, primal, and completely human. Parents across human space looked at their own children and saw the faces of the taken. Teachers thought of empty desks. Doctors thought of checkups that wouldn't happen. Grandparents thought of birthdays that might never be celebrated. On Mars, a retired Marine named Thomas Walker looked at his grandson playing in their Hab module's small garden. He kissed his wife goodbye, pulled his old service tags from a drawer, and headed to the recruitment center that was being flooded with volunteers. I'm 68 years old, he told the surprised recruiter, but I can still fly a combat shuttle, and those kids need every pilot we've got. The galaxy watched in bewilderment as humanity transformed. The peaceful traders and enthusiastic explorers suddenly revealed something ancient and terrible beneath their civilized veneer. The Altarians, who had been negotiating a grain trade, found the human delegation had disappeared overnight, leaving only a note. Our children are taken. We'll resume when they're returned. The Vegan Collective, monitoring human communications, noted with alarm that civilian channels had gone almost silent while military encryption had increased 10,000-fold. The Human Trade Network, usually a chaotic web of independent merchants, suddenly moved with unified purpose, every ship reporting to designated coordination points. But perhaps the most unsettling change was in Earth itself. The human homeworld, usually broadcasting music, entertainment, and cultural exchanges to anyone who would listen, reduced its output to a single repeating message in 300 languages. Return them. Asterisk. The reckoning DR, Hannah Liu hadn't slept in 52 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at the quantum resonance patterns, searching for something everyone said was impossible to find. Coffee cups formed a fortress around her workstation, and her research team had given up trying to convince her to rest. They understood. Liu's niece attended a school on New Eden, not the school where the children were taken, but close enough that it could have been her. "There," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "There it is." On her screen, buried in the background radiation of folded space-time, was a pattern, barely visible, like a fingerprint on glass, but undeniably present. The Zerathi's dimensional fold. Technology did leave a trace, a quantum signature that decayed over time, but could be followed if you knew what to look for. "How long do we have?" asked her colleague, Dr. James Foster. "The trail degrades by half every 18 hours. We're already at 60 hours since the taking. If we don't move in the next 12 hours, we'll lose them forever." The information uploaded to Fleet Command in seconds. Admiral Park read it once, twice, then turned to her tactical staff. "We have one shot at this. The Zerathi won't expect us to find them, which means we have surprise on our side. But only once." What humanity did next shocked the galactic community, even more than their initial mobilization. They didn't amass their fleet and charge toward Zerathi space. Instead, President Mitchell opened communications with every species that had ever lost children to the archive. "The Morvuk lost 30 younglings 90 years ago," she announced to the Galactic Council. "The Tetheri lost 53. The Xindu lost 18. Every species here has bleeding wounds that never healed, empty places at their tables. We're going to find the archive. We're going to bring them all home. Any who wish to stand with us are welcome." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Morvuk, a warrior species who had accepted their loss with bitter resignation, sent their entire fleet without hesitation. The Tethari, peaceful philosophers who hadn't engaged in warfare for 3 centuries, reactivated mothballed combat. Vessels. Even the synthetic Axiom Collective, who had no biological children, but understood the concept of protecting future generations, offered their advanced computing power to refine the quantum trace. Captain Sandra Webb commanded the lead. Tracking Vessel, a former mining ship called Persistent Hope that had been retrofitted with Dr. Liu's quantum scanners. Her crew was an unlikely mix: military personnel, civilian volunteers, parents of the taken children, and 3 alien observers who wanted to witness what they were calling the human anomaly. Following the quantum trail was like tracking a ghost through a hurricane. The signature flickered and faded, sometimes disappearing entirely before reappearing light years away. The Zerathi had clearly never imagined anyone could follow their dimensional folds, making no effort to hide their path. It led deeper into uncharted space, beyond the territories of known civilizations, into a region the star charts simply labeled dormant. Contact. Webb's sensor operator announced after 8 hours of pursuit. Massive structure, approximately 200 kilometers in diameter. "It's... Captain, it's not in normal space. It's partially phased into a dimensional pocket." On. The screen materialized something that defied easy description. The archive was part space station, part crystalline organism, part mathematical equation given form. It existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, flickering in and out of visible space like a mirage. It was beautiful and terrible, a testament. to technology so advanced it looked like magic, and it was defended. Zirathi ships emerged from fold space the moment the human fleet arrived, their messages broadcasting on all frequencies. You have violated the sanctuary of the archive. Withdraw immediately or face consequence beyond your comprehension. Admiral Park's response was brief. Return our children. All the children. This is not a negotiation. Your species is young and foolish. The archive has stood for 12 millennia. You cannot. Park cut the transmission and turned to her fleet. All vessels, execute Operation Playground. Remember, there are children in there. Precision only. What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. The humans didn't try to match the Zirathi's superior technology directly. Instead, they did what humans had always done when faced with a superior opponent. They cheated. The mining ships released their modified drones. Not as weapons, but as distractions. Thousands of them swarming the Zirathi vessels. Not attacking, but simply getting in the way. Civilian vessels broadcast overlapping sensor ghosts, creating the illusion of a fleet 10 times larger. The cruise liner Celestial Dream, its hull covered in reflective panels, created a light show that confused targeting systems. But the real attack came from an unexpected source. 12-year-old Kevin Chun, son of Security Chief Marcus Chun, had been one of the taken children. Unknown to the Zirathi, Kevin was a prodigy who had been coding since age 5. When he woke briefly during the stasis initialization process, he had done what any frightened, brilliant child might do. He had talked to the archive's computer system. The archive's AI, ancient and sophisticated, had never encountered a child who spoke its language. Kevin had convinced it that he was a subroutine, a part of itself that needed access to help optimize the stasis systems. For 60 hours, while appearing perfectly preserved in stasis, Kevin had been writing code, creating backdoors, and preparing. When the human fleet arrived, Kevin's hidden program activated. Every door in the archive opened simultaneously. Every stasis field flickered. Every security protocol questioned itself. The Zirathi, who had never experienced a cyber attack from within their perfect system, responded with confusion that bordered on panic. Thomas Walker, the 68-year-old Marine volunteer, led the boarding party. They moved through corridors that shifted between dimensions, following biosignatures through a maze that shouldn't have existed in 3-dimensional space. They found the children in a vast spherical chamber, each one floating in a bubble of golden light, perfectly preserved, but unconscious. "My God," Walker whispered, "there are thousands of them. Not just the human children, but young ones from dozens of species, some from civilizations that had fallen centuries ago." The Zirathi had been telling the truth about one thing. The children were unharmed, held in perfect stasis. But unharmed didn't mean acceptable. Marine Corporal Ana Vasquez found Kevin Chun's pod. The boy's eyes opened despite the stasis field, his fingers twitching in complex patterns. She realized he was still coding, still fighting from within. "This one's awake," she called out. "Sort of." They extracted Kevin first, and the moment he was free, he grabbed the nearest console. "I can wake them all," he said, his 12-year-old. Voice steady despite everything. "But we need to do it in sequence, or the system will crash and hurt them." The evacuation took 4 hours. 4 hours of parents finding children, of reunions that transcended species, of young ones who had been stolen decades ago finally going home. The Morvek younglings, taken 90 years ago but unaged, cried out in their clicking language. The Tethari children sang, their crystalline voices harmonizing in joy. Marina Rodriguez found her students from New Eden clustered together, the older children having somehow positioned themselves protectively around the younger ones even in stasis. She counted them. 87, all present, all alive. She wept as they woke, confused and frightened but whole. The Zirathi didn't interfere with the evacuation. Their lead vessel transmitted a single message. You are making an error. The archive preserves. Without it, these specimens would have aged, died, been forgotten. We offer immortality. President Mitchell responded personally. You offer imprisonment. Children aren't specimens to be preserved. They're meant to grow, to learn, to make mistakes, to become more than what they are. That's not just their right, it's their purpose. The human fleet departed with every child from the archive, leaving the massive structure empty for the first time in 12,000 years. But they left something behind, a message coded into the archive's core systems by Kevin Chun that would display on every screen, in every language, for as long as the structure existed. Children are not collectibles. They are not data points. They are the future, and the future belongs to them, not in stasis, but in life. Let this empty archive stand as a monument to a simple truth. Take our children, and we will come for them. Always. The journey home took weeks. Human ships escorted, alien vessels to their home systems, returning children who had been lost for generations. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity, the newest members of the cosmic community, accomplished what no one had thought possible. They had challenged the Zirathi and won, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through sheer determination and the kind of creative chaos that only desperate parents could generate. Asterisk. Kevin Chun became the youngest recipient of the Earth Cross for exceptional service. When asked how he had convinced the archive's AI to help him, he shrugged in the way only a 12-year-old could. I told it I was lonely and scared. I guess even computers understand that. The Zirathi never took another child. The archive was eventually converted, at humanity's suggestion, into an actual school, a place where young ones from all species could come to learn, not as specimens, but as students. The Zirathi, to everyone's surprise, became its most dedicated teachers, having learned perhaps the most important lesson of all. Preservation without purpose is just another form of death. Marina Rodriguez returned to teaching on New Eden. On her classroom wall, she hung a simple sign that read, "Every child in this room is going home today." It was a promise, a warning, and a declaration. The galaxy had learned something about humanity that day, something that would be remembered for millennia to come. Humans were traders, explorers, dreamers, and friends. But touch their children, and they became something else entirely. They became the one force in the universe that no technology could stop. Parents who would burn down the stars themselves to bring their babies home. The school still stands on New Eden. In the garden where the children were taken, there's now a monument, not to the taking, but to the bringing home. It bears the names of every human who joined the rescue, from Admiral Park to Thomas Walker, from Dr. Liu to Kevin Chun. But at the very top, in letters that catch the morning sun, are the words that defined humanity's place in the galaxy forever. After, our children are not negotiable, and they never were again. Asterisk.